The lengthy pretrial proceeding in the state court prosecution of Luigi Mangione is over, and we will get a decision next May. Next May, what's going on with that? May it please the audience, I'm Rich Schoenstein, and this is So Sue Me, the podcast usually about civil litigation. I did tell you this was going to be about civil litigation, but I also told you I was going to follow some of the really high-profile, interesting cases around the country. And this Luigi Mangione prosecuting is fascinating. It's also right downtown in my hometown in New York City. I was in court the other day. I went there to watch some of the evidence and check out the proceedings. So I'm very interested in what's happening, and I'm going to do some pieces on the Mangione case over the course of this podcast. There was 3 weeks of hearings, 17 witnesses examined by the prosecution and in most cases the defense. And now we have a schedule for what this is going to look like going forward. The defense has to make a submission by January 29th, 2026. That is some extra time on account of the holidays, basically giving them the entire month of January to put in their stuff. Then the prosecution gets to put in a submission on March 5th. And then the Judge Caro, said he will render a decision on May 18, 2026. So why so long, right? Well, because these are very serious issues. This is the hearing to determine what evidence can be used at trial against Mangione. And at issue are statements he allegedly made to law enforcement right around the time of his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And even more importantly than that, at issue are the contents of his backpack and how that backpack was searched and reviewed and whether the things found in that backpack can be used. And those are crucial, crucial issues. And the court, the judge, wants to make sure he gets it right. So he wants each side to have an opportunity to summarize in a written brief, what did the evidence show? What did the testimony, all of which was recorded by a court reporter, what did that show? What are the documents that were submitted into evidence? What do they show, and what does it mean for these issues? And then each side also has to have an opportunity to submit legal authority. What do the cases say? What do the prior decisions of the court say about these issues that are informative? What do they mean? How should the judge decide? And each side has to be able to give a well-written, well-researched brief on their side of the case, both so they have an opportunity to persuade the court and so that they make a record for a potential appeal, because no matter how this is decided, there could be further proceedings. There could be attention by the appellate division in New York, and they need to have an adequate record where everything is laid out, where everybody makes the arguments they want to make. So that's why it's going to take so long. Also, there's a lot of stuff to go through. This was a 3-week hearing. That's longer than many trials. There were 17 witnesses. If you listened or if you followed the testimony, you know that essentially the law enforcement witnesses gave you a minute-by-minute breakdown from being called by a McDonald's employee who said, some of my customers are worried about this guy, to arriving on the scene, to asking Mangione questions, to figuring out that he was a person of interest, to arresting him, to looking through that backpack. We have a lot of testimony that breaks that down on a minute-by-minute basis, and that's really crucial to the legal issues at hand. Okay. Essentially, there are 2 sets of legal issues. Now, the first set has to do with statements that Mangione allegedly made to law enforcement at or just prior to his arrest. And it's not clear to me at this stage exactly what statements the prosecution even wants to put in. I mean, at one point, I thought the only thing they wanted to put in was the fact that he allegedly gave a false identification. He presented a fake ID, he gave a fake name, and they want to be able to tell the jury that. And that to me didn't seem that controversial because that happened right away. Hi, what's your name? My name is fake name, Rosario, I think. And that ought to be evidence. Now, The reason this is an issue is because it was a little bit sloppy. They waited, I think, 20 minutes before they gave Luigi Mangione his Miranda rights, and that was, in my estimate, too long to wait under the circumstances here. Some of the officers thought right away that he was the guy, that he was a person of interest, and really the minute they thought that, they should have read him his rights. Also, there was testimony that at some point Mangione indicated that he didn't want to answer questions. And at that point, you have to either stop asking questions or you have to give the Miranda warning. There's really no way around it. So I think there's a problem with the timing of the Miranda warning. And then there was evidence this week that some of the interactions with Mangione were recorded either by audio or by video. Pennsylvania is a two-person consent state, so those recordings are problematic because they were made without Mangione's knowledge or consent or a Miranda warning. I don't think there's any way those recordings will be used. I think, in fact, the prosecution has withdrawn the recordings, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen with so-called statements made at the time of his arrest. We'll see, and that's one of the things these submissions do for the judge is they tell what the parties do and do not intend to use. Now, the other critical issue, probably more critical than the statements, is the backpack. The backpack, you will remember, when it was ultimately searched all through and through, contained, among other things, a gun, a silencer, a magazine for the gun, and a notebook that allegedly contains statements showing planning, showing motive. The notebook has been referred to sometimes as a manifesto. There was a whole side argument about whether they could say the word manifesto in court. I don't think they'll be allowed to say it in front of a jury, but we're just going to say notebook. So a gun, silencer, magazine, and a notebook, allegedly with planning in it. And that is the most damning evidence in the case, as far as I know. Now, there's video that may or may not show Mangione at the crime scene or bicycling away from the crime scene or at a hotel near the crime scene. And I'm sure that that video is going to be played at trial, and there'll be an effort to prove that he's the guy, and they may be able to show all kinds of other things with other evidence. So I'm not saying that the backpack is the only way they can convict him, but I am saying that from what I've heard, it is the strongest, best evidence that the prosecution has. And I think that if it got excluded on illegal search and seizure grounds, it would be a considerable blow to the prosecution. The problem I have with the prosecution's theory here is it's been a little bit herky-jerky. The first thing I thought the prosecution was saying was law enforcement had to search the bag. They had probable cause. They thought there might be a bomb in it. They were worried about safety. But when we really got thick into the testimony, that didn't hold up. The officer who searched it, conceded she didn't clear the McDonald's. She didn't tell people to leave. She didn't call the bomb squad. She just stuck her hand in the bag and started rummaging around, and it was all wet and icky, and she started pulling stuff out. That's no way to look for a bomb if you're worried there might be a bomb in a bag. So I don't think that excuse that they were concerned about a bomb is going to hold up, that they had a real pressing need to search the bag. But the prosecution has sort of identified two other possible justifications. One is that it is what we call a search incident to a lawful arrest. And you've seen this 1,000 times. When somebody gets arrested, the officers pat them down to make sure they don't have a weapon on them. And that's legal. You can do that. And if you're holding a bag, generally, law enforcement can look in there, again, to make sure there's no weapon in your reach, to secure everything incident at the time of arrest. The other thing we've heard is that the Altoona police were taking an inventory of the backpack. And that, too, is a common thing when you arrest somebody. You're taking them into confinement. You're putting all their belongings somewhere, and you have to record an inventory of the belongings that the police, have taken into possession. So that would make sense. It's not clear, though, now, is the prosecution saying this was a bomb scare, probable cause search, or it was an inventory, or it was incident to an arrest. It's not clear what theory they're sticking with. There's some indication that in Altoona, this is just what police do when they arrest somebody. They look through the bag. It's part of their standard operating procedure. That, of course, would raise the issue of whether that's a proper procedure, whether that's legal. We know you can't just, if you're the police, go searching through people's bags. You can't just grab bags at random and look into them and see what you find. That would be a violation of constitutional rights. So it has to have some connection to something. There has to be cause to look at it, or it has to be incident to an arrest, or it has to be a proper subject of inventory. And it's going to take some explaining, I think, by the prosecution to justify what it was. We do know that whatever kind of search it was out of the ordinary. What do I mean by that? Well, they started the search at the McDonald's. Then they took the bag and a McDonald's bag in a car. They brought it back to the police station. Generally speaking, the evidence indicated bags are searched in the intake area, right when you get into the police station, and in the presence of the individual, of the eventual defendant. Here, they didn't really do that. They took it upstairs to a separate room. The excuse was there were bigger tables. They can spread it out. It was searched out of the presence of Luigi Mangione. And that search at the police station is where they eventually found the gun, in a different part of the bag than they had searched at McDonald's. So it does seem a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of procedure. It's not entirely clear how the authorities justified it, and I think those issues were all definitely worth probing by the defense team and now briefing. Whether or not that is satisfactory under the United States Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, a right not to have improper search and seizure. It's a thorny issue. It's not clear cut. I sort of thought at the beginning of this it was going to be straightforward. I had a doubt that anything was going to be excluded from evidence, but understood the defense wanting to dig into it. I have much more doubt now than I did 3 weeks ago, because I think the defense has done a good job of poking holes at the procedure of the police and what they actually did. And again, this would be really significant because it's the best evidence in the case. So because of that, I'm very much looking forward to the briefs. I mean, the briefs are where the parties have an opportunity to set forth their argument as to what was shown. I don't think there were any real explosive moments in this 3-week. There's no real gotcha testimony that resolved the entire question, but the defense did a good job. And again, those are excellent lawyers defending Luigi Mangione. They did a good job planting seeds of things that might be arguments in the future, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to go back now. They're going to pour some water on those seeds. They're going to pull up the best arguments they have, and they're going to present them in a legal brief format to the judge and try to get some of this evidence excluded. It's going to take a long time, right? We're not going to know until May, which means the trial of this case isn't happening until at least the second half of next year. I think there are proceedings in the federal court happening sometime next month. We'll see what's going on there. If the federal action maybe could also proceed, maybe even on a speedier basis, I don't know. It sounded like this state case was going to go ahead first, but we're going to have to see now how that works out. As a general matter, it can take the state court system a very long time to make rulings on motions. In civil cases, which is more of what I do, they can take months and months and months. You can have a motion sitting around for a year. I'm waiting on results of motions that were briefed many months ago in several different cases, and cases can kind of stall and sit there until you get a result. More serious in a criminal case where you have somebody who is spending their time in prison waiting for a result, waiting for a trial, waiting for a decision by a jury. So that's where we are as of December 18th, 2025. on the Luigi Mangione New York State prosecution. Thank you very much for watching. Do not hesitate to subscribe to this feed. We're going to have probably more civil litigation matters coming at you. Don't hesitate to like the video if you did. Hope to see you soon. For now, we are adjourned.